Which beloved Buffalo Trace bourbon is the best? Let's do a blind matchup to find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So, when it comes to Buffalo Trace bourbon, pretty much everything from that distillery is highly allocated, well sought after, and for the most part, pretty well regarded. So I'm really excited to dive in and do a full blind matchup with 4 of the most well sought after, beloved bourbons from Buffalo Trace. So what do we have in today's lineup? As you can see, we've got regular old Buffalo Trace bourbon. This is probably one of the easier ones to find and usually around that $25 mark. So a good benchmark to have in here and see if it can beat out any of these 3 more allocated and more expensive bottles. Then we've got E.H. Taylor Small Batch, which is a bottled in bond whiskey, so 100 proof. Compare that to the Buffalo Trace, which is 90 proof. This, for me, is just one of the best products I've had from Buffalo Trace. Really, really good stuff. Excited to see how that does here. We've got Eagle Rare, a 10-year-old option, so more age on it. 90 proof, back down to that 90 proof point, so more mild, good oak aged flavors on it for me. So again, really excited to see how this one compares to the other options in the field. And then last but not least, we've got the classic Tater bottle, the one that everybody hunts and really, really wants. Pretty much the most sought after bourbon in the world, Blanton's. And for me, I've always had mixed feelings about Blanton's. I think it's solid, but it's just never super impressed me. So really excited and interested to see how that does in comparison to these other 3, which honestly I might say I'd gravitate toward any of these over Blanton's, but that could change in a blind setting. In any case, I'll remove these bottles, we'll set up the full blind, and we'll just dive right in. All right, everybody, just before we dive into the blind, do want to say, if you're enjoying all the content, would love to have you aboard for the rest of 2023 and beyond. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. While you're at it, hit that like button and then comment down below. What do you think these are gonna come out in terms of order? Put your list of predictions for what I'm gonna end up liking the most here and what I'm gonna end up liking the least, and see by the end if you got it right. All right, let's dive in here. We'll call this glass A and we'll work down this way to glass D, but glass A will start on the nose. Cheers. Ooh, it's got that sweet, fruity Buffalo Trace nose. Yeah, cherry forward. Little grapey. Maybe a good like orange zest here too. Some vanilla. Very sweet, very brown sugar as well. Really nice nose, maybe an apple note. Lots of fruits here. Yeah, honey. More in that light, bright, but with some base tones to balance that out, but mostly lighter and brighter with that fruit quality coming through strong. All right, that's pretty much classic Buffalo Trace, fruit forward, cherry, grape, honey, very sweet. Really, really inviting. Very solid. All right, let's go to glass B. Okay, similar, a little more muted though. Maybe a little bit darker, slightly more oak, a little more astringent too, so less forward with its sweetness, but it's still sweet. But yeah, this one just has a little bit more of a subtle nose with some more potential dark oak and aged notes going on. Maybe a slight tobacco presence as well. Interesting. Okay, so A was a little bit lighter, brighter, a little bit more forward with that fruit. B is a little more subtle, but definitely has a darker strain. All right, let's go to glass C on the nose. Oh, okay. Again, we've stepped it up a little bit in terms of darkness, I think. Yeah, this one has more of an oak and brown sugar presence to it overall. At least it's leading with those things. Still a honey and vanilla sweetness to it though, nice. More on like a darker grape side of the fruit spectrum here. Maybe even like a black cherry. Yeah, the brown sugar is nice on this. That's really nice. This and Glass A are kind of two ends of the Buffalo Trace spectrum, with Glass C here has more of those aged, hefty notes, a little bit darker. Glass A is that super light, bright, sweet, fruity. Glass B kind of sits in the middle, but it's, again, a little bit more muted. Interested to see how that one opens up. And then we'll go to Glass D here. Okay. A little more muted, more of a vanilla kick right off the bat. A little more spice too. Yeah, this one's got vanilla and spice for sure. It's a slightly more muted nose, just like Glass B was. Brown sugar. Touch of oak as well here. All of these have decent age on them, so I'm expecting some aged notes on every single one. Maybe back to that orange zest here as well. But this one has a strong vanilla note, some orange zest, and it's more spicy. So interested to see again how that one opens up along with B here, but C and A come forward with their sweetness. This is a whole spectrum, a whole arrangement of different flavors, but they all have that nice sweetness, some fruit qualities, and a good amount of brown sugar and aged notes as well. So they're all coming across pretty nice here. I wouldn't necessarily say that I know exactly where I'm leaning, but in terms of just pure nose, I think Glass C might be taking the cake. But again, the palate's going to give us so much more information. So let's start there with Glass A on the palate. Cheers. Okay, so that sip started out more generally just sweet. As it continued to envelop my palate, I got more of a vanilla, grape, like straight up just grapes, cherry, and honey sweetness. So it is a lighter, brighter experience. A little bit of brown sugar in there, a little touch of oak as well, but lighter and brighter, kind of like the nose gave off. A little bit on the thinner side, so not super robust, but pretty solid. Doesn't strike me as high proof. None of these are super high proof anyway, but it strikes me as pretty low proof and very approachable. But again, that general sweetness at first was kind of inviting, but nondescript, and then it got a little bit more specific with its flavors in that grape, cherry, honey category, and some aged notes to go along with it. Decent sip overall. Good start. Let's go to Glass B. First, I'll get some water. And let's move on to Glass B. Also very sweet, very approachable. Maybe a touch more spice on that sip. But again, it goes a little bit darker, a little less light and bright. Maybe a more dark cherry. I mean, there's still some bright cherry. There's brown sugar in there, a little bit more oak. Very easy to sip on. The finish is very smooth and subtle. It has good flavor that's continuing to linger, but again, this is a very easy experience, a very easy sipping experience. This one's a little bit more discernible in its specific flavors with those darker notes, more of a darker cherry, darker grape, maybe even tending toward plum a little bit, and a little more brown sugar and a little bit more oak as well. Okay, so kind of transitioned over from the nose. Let's get some more water. We'll go to Glass C. All right, Glass C on the palate. Again, I thought this might be the best nose, so let's see how that translates. Cheers. Yeah, that one's punching a little bit more in terms of flavor. It's got this like little touch of spice. So again, I'm not expecting any of these to be spicy per se, but that's got a little bit of heat to it. And it's got this cherry, vanilla, brown sugar core to it that's really, really nice. It's got some of those light, bright notes, but it does tend a little bit darker at times too. Maybe some of that black cherry coming through. There's a little bit of an orange peel or orange zest on this too in terms of the palate for me. Maybe a touch more of that like cinnamon or clove kind of spice as well. So that one has a little bit more robust experience for me, at least on the first go round. But let's get some water. We'll go to glass D. All right, glass D now on the palate. Cheers. Okay, so this one's distinctly a little bit different. It's a little bit drier, and there's actually kind of a note in here like a funky wood that I am not enjoying as much. There is that vanilla, honey, and oak presence, but there's also this wood note kind of comes through a little bit that isn't my favorite. It's got a little bit of that orange citrus zest here too as well, which is nice, but it's overall not as sweet and actually is a little bit flatter on the palate than, especially than C. Coming off of C, it's pretty noticeable, but I would say A and B even might have a little bit more warmth and robustness to them than D. So interesting first go through here. I'm gonna go back in reverse order and then I'm gonna do some A/B testing, but I'm going to fast forward through all of that for you guys so that it can just be a quicker video, and I'll let you know how that all goes, and then we'll reveal our order here. All right, everybody, I have gone in reverse order. I've done some A/B testing. I've revisited the noses, and overall, things are staying relatively consistent to what I first experienced here. To kind of walk you through the reverse order, D continues to have a little bit of that funkiness that isn't my favorite, throwing me for a little bit of a loop, but overall those vanilla citrusy notes, very solid. C continues to shine. I think that this one continues to have a more robust, slightly darker experience, but still very sweet. A and B continue to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. B is sometimes darker, sometimes a little bit lighter, and A is definitely the lightest and brightest for me overall today. Again, could vary just depending on order that these are in and my palate today, but that's kind of what I'm getting as an overall experience. These are all very similar. I mean, Buffalo Trace, other than maybe D, which stands apart a little bit, these first three feel very similar to me in terms of profile. So just want to say that and give a disclaimer that it is hard to pick out some of the flavors when you're tasting something from the same distillery. But overall, very nice lineup. Wouldn't be disappointed with any of these per se, and I think they're all pretty easy sippers and pretty approachable. That being said, I do have a pretty definitive order here, so we'll get into it by starting with fourth place for me. It's gonna be D. D just has this funkiness. It's a little bit off-putting for me. It's nice nose. There's great qualities to the palate, but it's got a bit of a funkiness, and it feels a little flat to me overall. So we're gonna take a look. What is D? Blanton's single barrel. That's what I thought. This one does have a bit of a funky wood note for me, and it's just not my favorite profile. I think there's good qualities to it, but each time I come back to it, I struggle a little bit with that funky wood note. It could be my single barrel, so disclaimer there, your experience could vary, but for me, this is just a little bit of a frustrating one that, especially over time, I just have not enjoyed Blanton's as much as I would like to. All right, in third place for me today was Glass A. A was nice and light and bright and sweet and fruity on the nose, but the palate was just a little bit disappointing. It didn't quite carry the flavor punch I was hoping for. Glass A is Buffalo Trace. That's what I thought. I thought it might be the standard offering with a little bit less of a punch to it for me in terms of flavors, and the nose is so good. The palate's pretty good too. It's super approachable and easy to sip on, but compared to these other two, it fell a little bit flat in terms of flavor punch. So it is, the $25 more findable option, so still very, very solid. I think it's like an 8-year-old kind of average age here. Really, really solid and very sweet, but a little bit muted in terms of its palate punch. All right, really came down to these last two here. They're both very, very solid whiskeys. For me today, I will reveal, I guess, first place, because that'll also give away second place. But B was this kind of towing the line between brighter and darker, had a nice mix. But C for me had the darker, richer flavors today. So overall, C was my winner. Let's see what these two were. The winner today, C, was E.H. Taylor, and the second place was Eagle Rare. Okay. Not surprising for me. If you asked me to rank these without knowing, tasting them today, this is probably a similar ranking to what I would give you. I might put Blanton's above regular Buffalo Trace, though again, I've struggled with it. So this makes total sense. I do think the E.H. Taylor is a step above the rest of these by a decent margin for me. It's got the richer, more robust palate overall. I do think Eagle Rare is very solid. It's kind of this interesting mix of like lighter, brighter fruit flavors, but those darker, richer, older flavors because it's got some great age, but it's lower proof. E.H. Taylor with that 100 proof just gives that extra punch of flavor and robustness that I'm looking for. And it's just really an enjoyable and fantastic sip. So E.H. Taylor and Eagle Rare are definitely a step above, but E.H. Taylor is the one I am just really loving sipping on. And again, it makes a lot of sense. I've just really enjoyed it from the second I opened it up. Really, really good whiskey. All right, everybody, that's my results today from this beloved Buffalo Trace lineup. Let me know in the comments below, did it match up with what you thought it would be? What would you put these for in your own order as well? Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.